Oh, hi brothers and sisters. We're back for a video. We're looking at many different things here. This isn't necessarily connected to the study we've been doing, though we're going to continue on that. But as with everything, everything's connected, right? So you can kind of put it down as part of the study we've been doing, because once we understand the full connection of all the allegories, and we get the real understanding now. What was fascinating me was the idea of the sword, and it speaks of a two-edged sword. It's two swords. Right now, let me see, because I tried recording this the other day, and my camera went off on me, and I hadn't realized that. So let's see if I can actually get this going right this time. And I recorded probably a 40-minute video on it, and I'm sure I said many things that I'm not going to say this time, which kind of upset me a little bit, but oh well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. So actually, what was fascinating me was the furnace that we see in the covenant in Genesis 15:9. So let's go to Genesis 15:9. Okay, so my camera is still on. Okay, Genesis, what did it do with it? It took it away. Oh, this is such a touchy mouse. I can't touch it without it doing something. It aggravates me. It is the worst computer I have ever owned. It just recopied another. That's how tricky this is. Oh my gosh. And it was pulled out. I just had Genesis. I was going straight to it, and it's just overlaid a new copy of something over it. That's how tricky this stupid mouse is. I apologize. It just makes me so mad. Every little time I touch it. It was a second-hand computer when I bought it. It wasn't cheap either, and this mouse has been nothing but crap since day one. I can't hardly put my finger on it, but when I want it to do something, forget it. It won't do it. So Genesis, okay, I'll go here because we want the full chapter. I already wasted minutes there with this crap. Okay, so Genesis 15:9 is the only time a covenant, the covenant of God, is mentioned. Now, in Jeremiah, the king takes a bull, a bullock, and splits it in the midst. Well, that's not the covenant of God they've got going on there. The only time the covenant of God is mentioned with animals cut in the midst is chapter 15 of Genesis. That's how we know the liars were at work in Jeremiah. I was going to say 15. I can't remember the exact chapter. That the king takes a bullock and cleaves it in the midst. And so we see them really mimicking this covenant here. Though again, we know, people being compared to animals came out of the nation of Egypt. And that's how they dealt with the glory and shifting it over from female to male, from human beings, daughters, to an animal that then came to a man standing. So they were very clever in the way that they manipulated everything. But it really is a mock in Jeremiah of this covenant, which they then make over into a male that they're making their covenant with, and is the head of Israel. And yet the head of Israel is identified as a heifer being cleaved in the midst, identifying the daughters of Israel rejected in this covenant. And so let's read it. And we're going to take a look at the furnace. So Genesis 15:9 says this, and she said unto him, take me a heifer 3 years old, a she-goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, and a turtle dove and a young pigeon. Now, he was to cleave them all in the midst, with the exception of the turtle dove and the pigeon. He was to leave them whole, and divide these three animals in the midst. Now, the heifer is identified as the nation of Israel. The she-goat, we see this flock of she-goats identified as the lilies of the covenant. And with the Shulamite also identified as the camp of Mahanaim, the presence of God on earth, for anybody who does their study. And so we see them identified in Song of Songs. We see them identified in Psalm 45. We see them in Psalm 60, Psalm 80, and there's a few other passages mixed in there. The more you study the lily or lilies of the covenant. And so we see him being instructed to take the turtle dove, set it to one side, and the pigeon to the other side. Now, they're pretty tricky on having you understand this, but the allegory certainly is there. And what is the allegory? we're seeing two covenants. When he splits those animals in the midst, we're seeing two covenants is what we're seeing. One male, one female. And that's a symbology of the turtle dove on one side and the pigeon on the other side. Then we see this happening in Genesis 15:17. And it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between these pieces. Another rendering, when the sun had set and it was dark, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch appeared and passed between the divided animals. Now, what you see in allegory is truly the admixture of doctrine, right, that we see with the Red Sea. And the presence of God, known as the camp of Mahanaim, or the lilies of the covenant, or the daughters of Israel. And Israel was identified representing a red heifer, yet which they burned to ashes. To which then we see the, what was it? The brand. I wrote it down. Where did I write it? The brand, the firebrand. And God says, oh, that a fire had come out of Zion, or Israel. And it's allegorical to the burning brand plucked from the fire. And we know that she was burned to ashes, Ariel at the altar hearth. So we get the altar hearth actually being identified as Ariel, as the daughter Zion herself, or Israel. And from this, God wants to pluck a firebrand, a brand, right? To burn what? To burn up the chaff, right? To burn up the wicked, because we identified the chaff as the wicked in the land through a verse in Psalm. I wrote it under one of my last 3 videos, all right? So I really think it's important you read the comments under the last 3 videos, and you'll find the weave of truth web weaved in there, the web of truth weaved in there. So we do see a brand plucked from the burning, we do. But here we see a burning lamp or furnace. So let's go to, do not tell me it is not here, Isaiah 31, verse 9. What does it say? Their stronghold will fall because of terror. Their stronghold is a harlot spirit. That's their stronghold that bows to them. Or certainly allows the world to perceive that that's the righteous spirit. She also says, I'm hid in his heart, no one sees me. So I wonder about the pecking order to some degree, though we also see him tearing the righteous spirit down. So we're looking at this, all avenues in and out of this covenant. So their stronghold will fall because of terror at the sight of the battle standard. Their commanders will panic, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion and whose furnace is in Zion. All right? So we've got the fire and the furnace. She wants to pluck a brand or a firebrand from the fire. And she wants to do that. Why? She says, oh, that a fire had come out of Zion to burn up the wicked with the truth, right? Now, we also see this furnace. We see it here. But we see it in Exodus. Where is my Exodus? Right there. Exodus 13, whether you know it or not. And it's identified as the presence of God, the camp of Mahanaim. Once again, we're kind of just talking this out. The video was much more full. I debated on whether to even do another video. But we are looking at piecing this entire puzzle together, which is going to end up being that little book, Our True Covenant, identified in the land. So the way that we look at the parting of the Red Sea, it becomes an admixture of doctrine called wine on the table, blood. And you are not washed in blood, you are stained in blood, you are washed in water. And so she says, when my watchers, when my holy ones who are reborn in the land, if they seek me out with all of their heart, she says, I will return to them and they will not experience my wrath. So it also says, the snare they laid for me, us to fall into, they have fallen into it themselves. And while I escaped, they do not escape. That's Isaiah. That's found in Psalm 141, or the very last verse, I believe. So she says, the snare they lay for me, they fall into it, but I escape. What snare? The snare of being at the feet of an idol. That is why most are unable to break down what's called the dark riddles, or the riddles that they don't know the meaning of. And we get these priests being handed a book that's been sealed up, and they're being asked to unlock its meaning in Isaiah 28, and they say, oh, but we cannot. We cannot. And the reason why they cannot is because they fell into the snare, the web of lies, that male is God. Well, God says, you are born in sin, you are shapen in iniquity at the feet of this idol. And that is why you cannot break the scriptures down. Once you turn away from that idol and the belief that blood wash you clean when it's truly my water, my word of truth, my sword of truth, then she says, I will turn back to you, my daughters. And so all you got to do is look around with your eyes to understand a few things. You got to be willing, number one. This calendar that's been developed, the Bible speaks of, he will think to change the days and seasons. Well, he did with those stones in the Old Testament. And I went looking for the verse. I ain't found it again, but I do have it pulled up somewhere. But I just have so many pulled up. But I will hit on it again. It speaks of the stones that you placed in the land. Now, that word stone could also be allegorical, or your rocks. The way it's, spoke, it seems like it's a bunch of them. A bunch of these rocks placed in the land in various places around the globe. Well, you can look at that as an idol. But you can also look at it as a calendar that got shaped through a web of lies. And in this calendar, they tend to want to look up to the hosts of heaven and allow them to guide them into the truth when what they're being led into is a web of lies. Because man don't save you. Man ain't coming to get you. God calls you a harlot spirit bowed down at the feet of an idol. Now, we've examined that, so I'm not going to go through it again. But we do get the understanding of a calendar through these, I believe, Stonehenge is one of them. There's other groupings of rock that they say is actually pointing to a calendar, a heavenly calendar. And God speaks of those rocks in the Old Testament. And she says, you take those rocks that you put up, and she says, more or less, you shove them where they came from. Well, that would be Baal's butt. He's called the Lord of Dung. All right? She says, you wait for your idol to save you. Right? That's what she says. Your idol ain't coming to save you. But she says, those who turns back to my truth and remembers the Creator and the days of their youth, she says, my wrath will not fall upon you, and to my appearing will be your great glory and their great shame. And we did the video in Ecclesiastics on the Creator and who that Creator is. She is your potter, the one who forms you in her womb, all right, and writhes in pain to bring you forth. Again, we've discussed that multiple times. So here we see the Red Sea admixture of doctrine as a wine on the table. But we also see a double-edged sword, also in the cutting of those animals and this furnace of fire walking through, all right? So what it's saying is we got to be able to part the two covenants. So I said there's two. There's two destroyers. One the destroyer of the truth, one the destroyer of lies. There's two swords. One, again, the one that holds the word of truth, one that holds the word of lies. Then we get two sons, one the false light and one the pure light of God that will enlighten you with the truth that makes sense and reasons out. And she says, I will place my wisdom upon these when they turn back to me. So you have to be willing to get away from that idol, at the feet of that idol. Number one, turn back to God. Remember your true Creator, the one who forms the clay in her womb, and the one who can travail to bring you forth. You forgot about that, God, didn't you? Yeah. Well, it ain't no father and son you forgot about. That's all I ever hear about. You know the one I never hear about? My mother. I never hear about my mother. I never hear about daughters. They delight in this lie. That's right. That's why they can't escape the snare they laid for these holy ones, or for the Holy One. So again, we get 2. All right? And so I think that's the understanding on the double-edged sword. You got to be able to go in and part those waters. The presence of God then goes forth in deliverance of her children. That presence is known as the camp of Mahanaim. It is a double camp led by the Shulamite. She says, look not upon me, because the sun, the false light, is look upon me and made me black. That means defile. When you go to Romans 14:4, and it speaks of the holy ones, the 144,000 not being defiled by the harlot Babylon. Men thinks it's all about them. No, run your words out. It means to be besmirched. It means to be blackened. It means to be muddied, right? By their sick minds and their sick, twisted thinking. And so it leads us right back to the Shulamite. It says, look not upon me, because my mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard. She says, the false light has shone upon me and made me black. So how do we know that we're defiled? It leads us to the Shulamite, or to Zion herself, or the daughters of Israel. Well, it says so in Micah chapter 4. Let her eyes look upon Zion, let her be defiled. And you defile women. That's who you defiled. And but God says, you know not the thoughts of the Lord, right? So we do get this double, double, double. And then we get the furnace here, right? Identified walking through the admixture of doctrine, delivering her children in Exodus 21. I believe I had thought to read a different passage here. 17. We'll start in 17. Exodus 13:17. It came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. So, then we go to 18. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. Then we go to who led them. Exodus 13:21. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud. The pillar was identified as feminine. We did a video. Maybe if I get the chance, I will post it. Let's write that. And I'll put a big star by it. So we identified the pillar. The one time the pillar is used on Rachel's grave, right? And the cloud is your cloud of witnesses, your righteous daughters, which is also seen being brought to the Ancient of Days wisdom, their mother. She's being led into her once again. As her only begotten daughter returns, she says, this day have I begotten thee, in Psalm 2. Ask of me the heathens, I'll give them all to you. They're yours to do with as you please. Now that you've found the truth, you may judge. And but they want to say it's a man. And in Psalm 45, as we said, it's just a reiteration of that chapter of the Ancient of Days in Daniel chapter 7, I believe. And of course they want to say, bow to your king and worship him. God never required you to bow to your husband and worship him, ever, never. That was placed in there by the men of Baal, we've discovered. So here we have them going through in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire. Now I think of that furnace again. To give them light to go by day and night. And she took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. So we're actually seeing this furnace walking through, parting the admixture, the Red Sea, which is wine on your table. Now the interesting thing is you're seeing two swords actually, or her with her sword parting these two covenants. And she is identified as the Holy One going through as the presence of God. She is God on the earth who was denied. She is the rock, the foundation denied before the foundation of the world, the righteous daughter of Israel. And so when we go to Deuteronomy 32, what was in Daniel 4? Yeah, I'll look at that later. So when we go and we read Daniel 32, which we identified where our rock was that we denied, that we forgot. This is the God you denied and forgot about. She says in verse 18 of Deuteronomy 32, the rock that writhed in pain to birth you. And those is the exact words there. You forgot about me. Well, we didn't forget about our Father. Oh no, he rules the world, baby. We didn't forget about the son. Oh no, he rules the world right beside father. Seems like you forgot about mother and daughter. That's right. And she says, you forgot I'm the one that gives life, not him. You forgot that. And she says, I know no other God but me. And she repeats that in many passages. So in Deuteronomy 32, verse 41, we get the sword once again, okay? So she says, when I sharpen, what's the word for sharpen here? And I looked this up, it's an amazing word. Watch this word. When I sharpen my flashing sword, her sword. So, wet is the word, 8150. To wet, to sharpen. Let's go down, see what else it means. Pierce, right? Sharp, sharpen, teach them diligently. Yeah. Let's see what else we got. Teach the words. Uttering sharp words. Sharpened of arrows. It says a false witness. Yes, but it's also the true witness, as in the end of days, who the world don't want to receive and thinks they finally killed them when they lay dead in the street for 3 days. So, prick, sharpen, teach diligently, a primitive root to point, intensively, to pierce figuratively, to inculcate. Now, I wasn't sure the meaning of that word, and I looked it up. So, inculcate means this. It means instill an attitude, an idea, or habit by persistent instruction. To teach someone an attitude, an idea, or habit by persistent instruction. So we actually see that double-fold meaning, what they did to us in the beginning, and God says, I will do to you in the end. And that means I will teach you my truth, right? I'm going to send my daughters of Israel, when they are reborn out of the dust of the earth, and there it goes, down it goes. Okay, there we go. So we see inculcate, to prick, to sharpen, to teach diligently. And again, we see the presence of God, the camp of Mahanaim, who is with the Shulamite, to sons, to swords, to covenants. What was the other one? 222. And we also see 2 stones, the harlot spirit stone that they laid as the foundation. We also see, I also wanted to look at fox. We know fox, when we get looking at that word, where did I find it? Let me see here. The dragon well, I had forgot to mention that, so I may just going to do it right quick here. The dragon well in Nehemiah 2:13, I think it is. Let me see here. I got it wrote down. But it's Nehemiah 2 anyway, and I think it is verse 13. It speaks of the dragon well. Well, when you look the well of water up there, it's feminine, right? Because we know that your well of water was to come from the woman, right? And that's identified in Proverbs 5. It's also identified in, we know, Song of Songs 4:12 to 15, and that she flowed from Lebanon like a living water that would give eternal life to everything that she touched. She was the foundation stone rejected. Now, we identified that spirit as the wife of the original covenant in Malachi chapter 2, to which he says to the men who takes on a harlot spirit and marries the daughter of a strange god, who is no God, which we identified as Satan, man himself, exalting himself to the throne of God in the seas of the water. But you are nothing more than just a man, says God. Says that in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, so we're piecing it all together. But this dragon well, so we know that the waters come from her. And they tore her well of water down. We see it identified as a pile of stones in Song of Songs, right? When you go in and you look at the words, she becomes a pile of stones, a ruinous heap, because they tear her well of water down, and they create their own well of water, which is truly an admixture of doctrine, blood dropped into it, saying blood washes you clean. Blood don't wash you clean, blood stains you, and blood makes you his harlot at his feet, claiming he's God who made everything. Why now do I see every man standing around with his hands on his hips as a woman in travail and every face turned pale? Why now do I see man standing around as if he's what gives life? Well, he don't. She said, I gave you my daughters, and they were the ones that was going to give you eternal life through my law. But you didn't want her. You tore her down. You made your own idol, your own well of water, and gave them blood. You mixed blood into my pure water is what you did. So here we have to part the waters. So then with the dragon well, right? When you get looking at your word fox, it'll take you to jackal. It may be reversed all around, so I can't quite remember. Fox will take you to jackal, or jackal will take you to fox, and both of these will take you to dragon. All right? Now we understood the meaning of a dragon. A dragon meant to be keen-sighted. Someone who could see great distances, either to the future and the benefits of laying a harlot spirit in place with women bowing at their feet, making them kings. And yet in the end, we've got a king God. Bow to your God, to your king. God says you didn't want God, you wanted a king. You didn't want me. And now all of a sudden in the end, nobody can remember what God said in the beginning. So as a dragoness, we women have to be keen-sighted enough to look into the past and to understand what this wicked sword that they sharpened against us was going to benefit them in some way. And it did. It brought on great bloodshed war. It brought on more money than they knew what to do with. And it brought on great sexual pleasure and derivation of us. Or, let her eyes look upon Zion, let her be defiled. Great defilement of the woman and what she truly meant in the land. They've made you a harlot. And most of these harlots will remain at the feet of an idol, born in sin, shapen in iniquity, refusing to turn from it back to their mother and open their eyes. So it says, remember thy Creator in the days of thy youth. And God says, remember me while the silver thread, or the silver thread, or silver rope, I forget what it says, the silver cord, and the golden bowl at the well is not yet broken, so you can still draw my water. Remember me before my wrath falls upon you who refuses to turn back to the true Creator. So you gave a time. And she says, once you turn back to me, then I will give you wisdom, right? Then I will fill you full of my wisdom, but you've got to turn back to me. You can't be expected to be full of wisdom and then turn back to her. You turn back to her first, and I hadn't realized that was what I was doing on my knees the night that I felt so beaten down that I called out to my Creator. And that is when I found Mother. After I found Mother, then she poured her wisdom within me. And that's what she states she will do for you when you turn back to her. Not before. It's only after you turn back to her and acknowledge your Creator in the days of your youth. But you didn't acknowledge her. So you do it after you've gone through all of this harsh treatment, and hopefully it will turn you back in great understanding why your mother is there to protect you. And she says, I'm not ruling through a harlot spirit. Nope. She says that in Ezekiel 21, whether you understand the words in there or not. But the interesting thing is, we'll keep reading on this sword here. This is what she says. She says, for I lift up my hand to heaven and declare, surely as I live forever. So this is the angel, the birthright holder, in Revelations 10. Actually, her mother left, and her daughter now follows behind. And she says, this day have I begotten thee, in Psalm 2. And so she says, ask of me the heathens, I'll give them all to you in your birthright. So then it comes to this angel standing in Revelations 10, taking back her birthright. And she says, I swear by she, not he, who lives forever, right? So, but here we had Mother who left her. The glory leaves, we're told. For I lift my hand to heaven and declare, as surely as I live forever. See, she never did die. When I sharpen my flashing sword in my hand, grasps it in judgment. Where else do we find her grasping it in judgment and in great wrath? After you've been allotted a certain amount of time to return back to wisdom, and you refuse her words and say, nope, it's him. Then she comes and she grasps it in judgment. And we see her in Psalm 110, those kings against those wicked kings who took counsel against her to cut her law off of them so they could rewrite their own and make you their harlot. She says, I will take vengeance on my adversaries and I will repay those who hate me. Who hated her? Well, we know it's always in reference to the daughters of righteousness that the sons of wickedness hated, along with the harlots that was in covenant to empower themselves in some way that really didn't empower them at all. And what we see is in Genesis 49, 22 to 24, if you want to look those words up, it was the daughters that the Baal archers were shooting at. That's another name for your husband, who hated you. Because he just couldn't receive the laws of heaven at her mouth. He couldn't just, oh my gosh, it just drove him crazy, and it still does today. To think in those terms, female, no, it's he. You see, that's a snare. They laid for us to fall into, but they fall into it and can't escape it. They can't. It's like honey on their tongue. It tickles their ears, but it's wormwood in their stomach. It is going to kill them. And God promises them, I will take my vengeance on my adversaries, and I will repay those who hate me. And over again, that word hate me appears in context to God, and the God that they hated was the daughter of Israel, the presence of God on earth, the camp of Mahanaim. And so I will make my arrows drunk with blood. There we go with drunk, right? That's an interesting word. Drunk with blood, while my sword devours flesh. The blood of the slain and captives and the heads of the enemy leaders. That leads you to feminine long hair. So she says, no one sees me, I'm hid in his heart. So, number one, he's hid her in his heart. He's in love with her, right? But number two, she's there. She's exalted. So we identified the second heaven, and we also, if you go to the New Testament words, the principality and the powers of the air are also feminine. And they appear to be ruling from the second heaven. Yeah. Right? That harlot spirit that man exalts in his heart and put in charge so he could play God. Now we understood what all of that meant. So she says, my arrow is drunk with blood while my sword devours flesh, the blood of the slain captives, the heads of the enemy leaders. So she's going after them both, right? The sons of Baal, the sons of Belial, but also the long-haired leaders who bows to the idol and pretends they're not building him up. And from, she's got to make this spiritual attack in the second heaven to take that harlot spirit out. We see the harlot, actually, the commander or the host, being handed over in the book of Daniel, right? And so most don't get it. It's really fascinating. I can't remember the exact chapter. Let me see if I can remember. The host gets handed over, and the stars are cast down and trampled to the ground. Right there. It is found in Daniel 8, and you're not going to get any other context other than they're literally cast out of the second heaven down to earth and stamped upon by the feet of men. So, verse 10. Daniel 8, verse 10. Now, I did this on a video quite a long time ago. I'd never find the video. It was one of my earlier ones. And it waxed great. Really, it did it? That's the harlot spirit exalted in man's heart. Waxed great, even to the host of the heaven. Who is the host of the heaven? That's the Holy One, daughter Israel, right? That was the host. Even to the host of heaven. The host belonged to her. That means the children belonged to her. And it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yeah, crushed them under their feet. Yea, he magnified himself even to the principal of the host, or she magnified herself, the harlot, which he exalted in his heart, even to the principal of the host, So you get this word, prince, prince, prince. You know, it's the principals, your chiefs, your first fruits, right? And we'll get that word Sar with Sarah. They try to make it a male. But Sarah's name is derived from Sar, chief of the kingdom, the principal, right? Which they changed from a righteous spirit to a harlot bowing at their feet. So, even to the principal of the host, and by him or her, the harlot spirit, the daily sacrifice of thanksgiving. It's a thanksgiving offering. It's not a blood offering. The daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of her sanctuary was cast down. Whose sanctuary was cast down? The house in the forest of Lebanon. That's the female tabernacle that they tore out of existence, where the laws of God came from. That's right. And a house was given over to him. Who's got the children now? Daddy. Father's children. Father's children. Now, we've got a warrior in view here on my drunk with blood. So if we go to Psalm 78, right, what do we get? Do I have Psalm 78 pulled up? Maybe I've already gotten it. I do not. Okay. Psalm 78. And it speaks of the Lord asleep or drunk on wine, who finally awakens. She divides her the covenants, and puts hers, and finally leads her children out like she was supposed to. So here we go. It is in Psalm 78, verse, let me see. This is probably such a long chapter, it'll be forever. Is it 45? Let me see. I'll keep moving along here. And they remembered that God was their rock and the high God, their Redeemer. God was their rock. That takes us to Deuteronomy 32, verse 18. And then we find this Lord awakening. Where is it? I'm not finding it. Oh. Come on. Wakes as a warrior that's been drunk on wine. Oh, come on. This is a good chapter. Right there, verse 65 is the verse. So what does it say? It says, then the Lord awaked as one out of sleep and like a mighty man. No, just because they changed the gender doesn't mean it's correct out of Baal's butt. He is the Lord of dung. So everything's going to be he to get the harlot to bow at his feet. That's right. Get it? But you are born in sin and you are shapen in iniquity. And only when you turn away from that idol are you going to see the truth. Then the Lord awaked as one out of sleep and like a mighty woman that shouteth by reason of wine. Okay, so that's the admixture of doctrine. And again, it takes us straight back to what is said in Deuteronomy 32, which is where... I get tired of doing this. What does it say? I will make my arrows drunk with blood, while my sword devours flesh, the blood of the slain and captives, the heads of the enemy leaders. So if we understand the full meaning of this here in Psalm 78, wakened as one out of sleep, it's going to take us to that almond branch that we studied in the last video in Ecclesiastes 12. This almond branch, when it buds, right? And that's one of the two items, I think, supposed to be in the Ark of the Covenant where the glory of God sat, right? Whom they blasphemed, the Holy One, right? And defiled the name of God. Defiled the name of the Holy Spirit is what they did by teaching woman as a harlot at the idol's feet of Baal, her husband, who will wash her in his blood, and he created everything. Okay, yeah. that don't reason that that's a lie. That's why she gives us wisdom after we turn to her. You have to turn to her and understand what's missing in the picture, and then she'll feed you the rest of the truth. But you're not going to wait. Well, if she's real, she'll turn me back. No. She's waiting for you to turn back to her. She says she turned away from you. And only when you turn back to her will she turn back to you. So you've got to determine to pick yourself up from the feet of that idol, turn back, start looking for what don't make sense in the story, which is that Father gave life to everything. Oh, well, if that's true, then the creation below is an absolute lie. Absolute lie, because she's the one that forms the clay. And this is what? She that formed the clay and travailed to bring it forth doesn't have eyes and doesn't have an ear? She who formed the ear, she who formed the eye, can't see, can't hear? Don't think so. That's a lie. Of course she's going to see and hear. She's the one that made the ear and the eye. So reason the truth out. So this takes us to the almond branch, the word awakened, right? And the almond tree is the first tree awake, right? That's what it states when you look up almond in that passage in Ecclesiastes 12. It's the first tree to awake. And it takes you to the word shakad, I believe is the word if I'm saying it right, which means to arouse in oneself and to awaken out of sleep. Yeah. And then we got it here. So then the Lord awaked, aroused herself out of sleep, finally decides to wake up, like a mighty woman that shouteth by reason of the wine on the table. She's been drunk on it. And she finally wakes up to that fact, and she decides to part the admixture of doctrine, and finally leads her children out through the Red Sea, which is allegorical to your admixture of doctrine. Now, did I say everything? So, here this is going to lead you again to Isaiah 42. She who has been restrained, she's no longer restrained. Guess what restrained her? The wine. Drunk on wine. That's what restrained her. Being drunk on a lie restrained her. That's right. Being drunk on the religious lie and law, telling her, oh, this is what makes me righteous, bowing at his feet, washed in his blood. No, that's what's restraining you. That's what it says here let's pull it up. We've read it many times. For anybody who's actually watched my videos, I'm sure you're sick of it, but I can't stop hammering away on it. According to those who's watching my video, a mere 250 has watched my videos in 9 days, and people will say, well, why does she keep harping? Why does she keep harping? I keep doing that because many of my videos have less than 200 counts on them. The most I've got is 3,000, and that was on videos. I don't think I've even hit 3,000, 2,700 maybe. It's because I am still at the point where I am still willing to discuss Christ, Jesus, and so there's still, feeding on that. And, yeah, I know, but I need them there. If you're willing to take those stepping stones and move through what we come to understand and how we understood them, I feel it important that I actually leave them there. But as far as the truth ringing true to these wicked ears that are still bowed at the feet of an idol, refusing to turn, it's simply not reasoning. And the reason it's not reasoning to you is because you have refused to turn back to your Creator. You denied her in the days of your youth. Now you are old enough to understand everything you have gone through, who your true Creator is, and you are still refusing to turn back to her. I lost my train of thought once again. So, we were going to Isaiah 42, and here she is no longer restrained. And what does she say? Isaiah 42. It's also going to lead us at verse Psalm 78, but the Lord there is 136, and that is daughter Israel's number. We've identified her over and over again. But they try to make this a male right here in verse 13. Again, it's a female. The Lord shall go forth as a mighty woman. She shall stir up jealousy like a woman of war. If they ain't going to be jealous, what does it say? Israel will be made jealous. Now, I think the Israel being made jealous is the male component. Being made jealous, or the harlot spirit that the men of Israel chose over their own righteous daughters of Israel. We saw Balaam and Balak sending in the harlot spirit that had been taught the religious lie of man. And they were bringing the plague in on these righteous daughters of Israel. To which then mother says, you don't want my scepter, I'll cast her out into the lands of the Gentiles. And there is actually your allegory of the Azazel goat, which was the she-goat, again, your covenants of the lilies, bearing the sin for what Israel did, for what the men did, which was to take into them a harlot spirit, marry her, and all of this stuff, and receive the religious lie of man making his own laws. That's the Torah, and then it leads to being fed out to the four corners of the world. But the daughters who bear the burden as this she-goat that is cast out into a land not inhabited, that means a land not inhabited with her Holy Spirit, gets cast out, and she has to bear the sins double upon her head for what the nation of Israel did, for what the men did. And so we see them taking a false branch, to which God says in Jeremiah 4, 5, 6, somewhere along that, these are not mine. These are not my branches. These are not my daughters. You married the harlot spirit so you could play God and exalt yourself on my holy mountain. That's what you men did in Israel. But the only way to claim to be in Israel was through the righteous daughters of Israel. So they get cast out into the lands of the Gentiles. But mother also promises these daughters that by the end they will claim them all. So by casting the righteous daughters of Israel out to bear the blame, because they could not stop the harlot spirit from coming in upon these men, though they tried, it's indicated they tried hard to stop it, they get cast out. And that was the fulfilling, actually, of the promise found in Isaiah 49. You will not only claim Israel as your own, you will also claim the Gentile nations as your own. Well, the only way to claim to be an Israelite was through the daughters of Israel. So through these daughters being cast out, the nations of the Gentiles actually gets claimed by her, is your understanding. And though they stick everything he, you got to learn to separate your covenants and where the she comes into it, which is, she is your head, she is your chief, she is your ruler, but she was not a king demanding. All right, which is what his covenant did to us. It demanded and tore us down and gnashed upon us with their teeth, with their arrows, with their words of lies, right? So God says, in the end, I will whet my sword, I will sharpen it, I will teach, I will make known my true covenant, and my daughters will return back to me. And she says, when they do that, I will bring them all back to the land. I will pull them out of the nations, and I will bring them back to their land. Okay, so then we have this verse, Isaiah 42:13. The Lord shall go forth as a mighty woman. She shall stir up jealousy like a woman of war. She shall cry, yea, roar. That's your lionesses of God that you'll find in Micah chapter 4, I believe. Yea, she will roar. She shall prevail against her enemies. This is Ariel. Which leads us to, I don't know, did I touch on that firebrand? I don't know, did I mention that already? The firebrand that is plucked, yeah, I did. I opened up with that. Ariel, altar hearth, where she was burned to ashes. That's right, the heifer, the she-goats. And she lays as a dove, a turtle dove, at the Ariel as an ash heap in Psalm 68, with her village surrounding her. And her village was identified as daughters of Israel, who had their children with them, sons and daughters with them. And they also was identified as the congregation of God that met on the north mountain, to which we see Isaiah 14, and it's Solomon that we link doing this in Ezekiel 28 with that word, thou art wiser than Daniel. There was only one wiser than Daniel, that was Solomon, who exalted himself to the north congregation. We know he was the one who tore the house in the forest Lebanon down, where these daughters met as the government of God, who took the laws of God out into the land and published the word. You find that in Psalm 68. Surrounding their Lord, 136, who's been burned to an ash heap, but is promised to rise as a dove with her wings coated in silver and gold. All right? So we are linking it all together. So this then shifts to verse 14 from a man. It was no man in verse 13. They just didn't want to give it to you. because then you would have easily linked that verse in Psalm 78 to the Lord 136, she, daughter of Israel. And they didn't want to hand that off to you. So they just simply changed the pronoun to a man here, or whatever the noun. I say pronoun for everything, I don't mean it. But whatever it's classed as, I believe it's a noun. Man. Let me see. It's been a long time since I've been in school. Noun. Yeah, a thing is a noun, right? Yeah. Anyway. So they stuck male there because they didn't want risk linking you to 78:65, which the Lord that awakes from that wine, drunk on that admixture of doctrine, she finally wakes up, parts the Red Sea into the two covenants. There's two swords, there's two suns, there's two lights, the light that shone upon us in the beginning, making us black in the spirit, defiled us at the feet of an idol. You don't get washed in blood, you stain in blood. This beast system is a system of violence. So you've got your blood, you've got your money, you've got your sex, you've got your thievery going on all over the place by the men of Baal who built an idol up and put you at his feet, telling us that we have to bow to our husband. Well, we will never have righteousness in the land as long as he's our head. Never. Because he was never meant to be our head. He's got the harlot exalted in his heart, and there will never enter in any righteous or morality into the land as long as you let him get away with it. We have our own head. And our head was our wisdom, our mother wisdom from above. And we turned from her. And only when we turn back does she turn back and place her wisdom upon us. You want to keep bound at the feet of an idol? You want to keep up those fake calendars, those stones mentioned in the Old Testament, waiting for an idol to save you? Fine. But she says, when I truly return, and she says they prophesy their false prophecies and then wait for the fulfilling of them. But she says, when I return and I scroll back the heavens and you see the true God sitting on the throne, it'll be to the great glory of those who turn back to me and to the great shame of those who couldn't make their way up from an idol, that couldn't reason a simple truth out. So then we go to verse 65. No, wrong. Isaiah 42 was where we were. 13, right? With a shout, she will raise the battle cry and triumph over her enemies. She's promised to do this. Then in 14, we know it's her. I have long time holding my peace. I have long time been still and what? Restrained myself. She was restrained by the wine. She was drunk on wine. She was put to sleep on the wine. Does wine not cause you to go to sleep? The admixture on the table? Of course it does. Romans 11, God says, I have given them a spirit of stupor, right? That they have not seen unto this day. And she says, I'll only turn back to them when they turn back to me. So, what does it say? I'll look for the verse. Verse 8. Verse 8. What does it say? According as it is written, God has given them the spirit of slumber, sleep, drunk on wine, drunk on an admixture of doctrine, of lies. He dripped blood into her pure water, given them a spirit of slumber, eyes that they should not see, and ears that they should not hear, until this day. And David said, let their table be made a snare. Their table. A snare and a trap and a stumbling block and a recompense unto them. It wasn't David. It was the daughter of Israel who said this. It was not a man. Let their eyes be darkened that they may not see. Right? But what does it say? Has Israel not obtained that which she seeketh for? I say to them, have they stumbled? Have my daughters stumbled? Right? Have my Holy One stumbled that they should fall? God forbid. But rather through their fall, salvation is come unto the Gentiles for to provoke them to jealousy. You see, that's not rendered correctly. But we know what it means. She got cast out into the lands of the Gentiles so that salvation could come to them through these daughters when they awaken out of the dust of the earth. When that happens, it's going to make current day Israel jealous, is what it kind of sounds like. So here we have, I have long time holding my peace, I have been still, and I have restrained myself. Now will I cry like a travailing woman. I'm not putting that in there. She left enough in there for us to find our Creator. That's right, when we finally grow up and begin to understand the truth. I will destroy and I will devour at once. I will make waste their mountains and their hills, and I will dry up all their herbs, and I will make the rivers islands, and I will dry up the pools. I'll dry up the oceans. We're told of the oceans being made into pure water, rivers, that will then go forth and cut the land, and where those pure waters that flow from the true living God, the daughters of Israel, it says life will return to the land. But all of the salt out of the oceans will go to the marshland, and it says nothing will grow there. It'll be nothing but dead. So we know it's her water. It's also her covenant restored in the land. It's also her temple restored. And I'll make the rivers islands. I'll dry up the pools, and I'll bring the blind, you blinded, who finally choose to open your eyes, by a way that they knew not, an understanding, a teaching that they knew not. I will lead them in paths that they have not known. I'll make darkness light before them. So this current light that we're under is the false light identified in the Bible that made the Shulamite dark in the beginning. Then it taught an idol man. Every successive kingdom continued to build on this idol, male idol, as Lord and God. We see it in Daniel too. And it's only when these daughters wake up, that's been drunk on wine, asleep, finally wakes up, determines to turn back to their Creator, now old enough to understand things, and what this lie has done to them and their covenant in the land. And they turn back. She puts wisdom upon them, right? They turn away from that idol, and then they are the stone that smashes the toes on that false idol, that covenant of darkness in the land. Oh yeah, we got light. People can't seem to get the understanding. That light made her black. It's a false light. That's the false light shining. So we know there's two sons, and this son is the wicked son, the wicked covenant that we have, placing woman under an idol of a man as if he is your Lord and God, and yoking us and stealing and placing great violence upon us, taking our riches from us, because everything was made by him. Yeah, don't get it yet? You don't want to turn away from that idol, do you? So I will make their rivers and pool. I will dry up their pools, and I will bring the blind by a way that they knew not. I will make darkness light before them, and crooked things straight. These things will I do unto them, and not forsake them. They shall be turned back. Who are you turning away from? That idol of man, which is Baal. It was the bull god Apis out of Egypt that followed the Israelites out of there. Then they make this golden calf, solar deity, came out of Egypt, which eventually, it says, you changed your glory to that of an ox that eateth grass. Then it comes to, oh, I require a sacrifice of a bull, of a man, to wash you in his blood, to cleanse you from all sins. God says, those who sacrifice a bull or kill a bull is as if they murdered a man. I ask no blood of you. You dripped your lies into my pure water, and you defiled my holy ones. And I ain't ruling through a harlot spirit. And when she turns back, I'll take my scepter. That means her spirit will come upon us in great power. There's a power that the Bible speaks of that they are greatly in fear of. Greatly in fear of. So there is some kind of real power behind it. I don't completely comprehend it. But we see her having full control, the presence of God, out in the wanderings, having full control over all elements. So there is a real power. And when she chooses to hand that power back to us, enters in great fear into the land. All right. So they shall be turned back. They shall be greatly ashamed that trusted in that graven image of a man as your Lord and God, washed in blood. You're not washed in blood. You're stained in it. That's the mark of the beast system. That says to the molten images, ye are our gods. So there we go. What, did I forget anything? Oh yeah, there's lots of passages we can go into And it's really gonna, you know, light it up for you. Weave it together, the truth for you. Because the web of lies is not holding around the globe. And it speaks of that web of lies, I believe in Psalm 59, as a body built upon violence that cannot hold together. A web of lies. And that's what is stated in it. Wow, it's an hour. So it's sort of part and parcel of the study, and because it has to be. We have to understand all these things together in context. And so that's it. It's long enough. Thanks for watching. Beautiful day here. It's a gorgeous day here. Not hot, not cold, just nice. It's a nice time of year. Trees are turning color. Gorgeous trees. Thanks for watching. I pray the Lord blesses you with an abundance of her water. I pray you turn back to your true Creator. Before the silver cord is cut and the golden bowl is smashed and the wheel at the well of water where your true life is found is broken. I pray you turn back to her before you no longer have a chance to discover these truths for yourself. So I do pray you are blessed with an abundance of those precious waters while there is yet time. I thank you all for watching, for taking your precious time to watch this hour-long video. I appreciate it. And I hope you all have a glorious day. It's a beautiful day here. And thanks for watching again.